Peace like a river attendeth my way. When sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Though Satan should buffet, though trials should come, let this blessed assurance control, that Christ has regarded my helpless estate, and hath shed his own blood for my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. My sin, oh, the bliss of this glorious thought. My sin, not in part, but the whole, is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. And Lord, taste the day when the faith shall be sight, the clouds be rolled back as a scroll, the trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul.
We invite you to stay tuned for the live broadcast of the Wednesday evening Bible study of Mayfield Drive Baptist Church, located in Smyrna, Tennessee. We will now join the service.
All right. Thank you for joining us Wednesday evening Bible study here at Mayfield Drive Baptist Church. So glad you're with us tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started with our lesson. We're continuing with answers for modern Christian questions. And tonight will be my third and final lesson on Muhammad. Finally going to get done with this feller. I know, right? Whoop, whoop, finally getting done. I'm tired of looking at this guy. I'll be honest. Just tired of looking at him. By way of introduction, as we do every time, there are many times questions are asked for which those of the church are unable to answer. I cannot read my own writing. This is one major thing that turns away a large percentage of people because they come away with the impression that people who are in the church either cannot answer their questions or worse still, don't care. In the questioner's eyes, this is a major failure because the church has nothing to offer them in any form. We know that's false, but you don't believe they're listening and you don't believe they're going to answer your questions, you have a tendency just to turn people off. Why bother? Therefore, they turn away and are not receptive to anything that resembles something spiritual. Within this series, we will address some of the questions that the church seems unwilling to or cannot answer. These are questions that many young adults never seem to get answered, causing them to turn away and seek something else. So we have a subcategory that we've been working on, and that's ruling the world from hell. And I don't believe we have anybody on the list after this gentleman, and maybe that's giving him a lot of credit. But I think our list is complete at this point until we...
There may be one more.
Maybe one more? Okay. We haven't... Like I said, I think we got down to the end of the list, but it's constantly under advisement and revisement. So if we have more, we'll open up this subcategory and bring someone else to you. But again, we're going to continue with Muhammad. And our verse for this lesson, and has been for the last two lessons, is Revelation chapter 20, verses 10 through 15. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God. And the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. So we once again return to the list of false teachers who can actually fit the bill of ruling the world from hell. Of course, they aren't aware of it. They're not aware of any of it. But their false teachings and beliefs are so influential that literally millions of people are still led astray from the actual spiritual truths of God's Word. Remember, people die, philosophies do not. So tonight we're continuing our look at Muhammad. This is part 3, the final lesson. As long as I don't take too long, and we're actually able to finish it. And again, picture here I have on the screen, that's Muhammad, done by M. Prideaux in 1699. He holds a sword, crescent, while trampling on a globe, the cross, and the Ten Commandments. Now, there's a reason why when you try to find pictures of Muhammad, they're hard to come by. Extremely hard to come by. This picture is not a real representation of him in any way. It's just a depiction. So he didn't actually look like that. Obviously, this is almost 1,000 years, actually 1,000 years after he was alive. Over 1,000 years after he was alive, so this guy would have no clue. We'll continue with our look at an individual that's been responsible for billions, with a B, billions not coming to Jesus, but instead going off into hell. This individual was a man by the name of Muhammad. I know I keep repeating his name. One of these days I'll finally say all of his name. I think I actually can. All right. Muhammad's life was traditionally defined into two periods. Periods are pre-Hijra immigration to Mecca from 570 to 622, and post-Hijrah in Medina from 622 until 632. Muhammad is said to have had 13 wives in total, although 2 have ambiguous accounts. So in other words, 11 that are known for sure, the other 2, and Rahana bint Zaid and Maria el, good luck on that one, I have no idea, as wife or concubine. Sure, we'll go with that. At the age of 25, Muhammad married the wealthy Khadijah, thank you. And I just don't see that. Bint Khuwailid, okay, who was 40 years old. The marriage lasted for 25 years and was a happy one. Muhammad did not enter into a marriage with another woman during this marriage. After she died, he got busy. Married several.
She probably wouldn't allow it.
Considering she was his money source and provider and caretaker, probably not. After Khadijah's death, Khawala bint Hakim suggested to Muhammad that he should marry Zada bint Zama, a Muslim widow, or Aisha, daughter of Rahman and Abu Bakr of Mecca. Muhammad is said to have asked for arrangements to marry both. One's not enough, let's go for 2. According to classical sources, Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 to 7 years old. The marriage was consummated later when she was 9 years old and he was 53 years old. I mentioned that to y'all 2 weeks ago.
And she was a widow?
No.
Okay,
The first one was a widow. She was not the widow.
I was hoping I heard that wrong.
No, sir. No, sir. You did hear that wrong, although you are reading it correctly. She was 9 years old and he was 53. Muhammad performed household chores such as preparing food, sewing clothes, and repairing shoes. He's also said to have accustomed his wives to dialogue. He listened to their advice, and the wives debated and even argued with him, which that sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? Considering the state of Islamic or the Muslim or Islam now, right? Yeah. For what we know and understand without being believers or practitioners of it, that's a very unknown thing, right? Muhammad had 4 daughters and 3 sons. Only 1 daughter outlived him. All 3 of his sons died in childhood. One died in birth, one lived to be 2 years old, and the other one died while still a child. Doesn't say how old he was. By the way, I did not try to pronounce any of their names. 9 of his wives survived him. Aisha, who became known as Muhammad's favorite wife in Sunni tradition, survived him by decades. Well, obviously, considering she was 6 or 7 when they got married. That's not surprising. I'm sorry, is anybody surprised by her surviving him?
No.
I kind of wasn't. The math kind of works out there.
Unless he pulled a Henry VIII on her, then he wouldn't have.
Still, she should have survived him by quite some time. Was instrumental in helping assemble the scattered sayings of Muhammad that form the hadith literature for the Sunni branch of Islam. Remember I said there's a Sunni branch and the other one? I can't remember the other one.
The only reason I remember it is because it sounds like the curse word Shiites.
Shiite, that's right. Sunni and Shiite. There's actually a 3rd branch.
Brother John says, proof Muhammad lost most of the arguments.
Proof he lost more of it. According to a BBC summary, the Prophet Muhammad did not try to abolish slavery and bought, sold, captured, and owned slaves himself. Yes, and we've looked at that, seen that. But he insisted that slave owners treat their slaves well and stressed the virtue of freeing slaves.
But he couldn't be bothered to for himself, I guess.
Muhammad treated slaves as human beings and clearly held some in the highest esteem. Right there is where that is all found. By the way, the rest of it's found from the same article, and I forgot to put it at the tail end. So all of us come from here.
You didn't say what the other
Shiite.
Shiite, yes.
I didn't say the third.
No, there's only
No, there's three.
three?
There's three branches.
Those are the two main ones.
Those are the two main ones.
There's two major ones, right?
Yes, there's two major ones. And the third is in Saudi Arabia, and that's wasabi? What? It's in the lesson a little bit later. We'll see that one a little bit later. But yes, there is a third, much smaller segment. Sunni is the highest. Shiite is much smaller.
And they're constantly warring against
And they are constantly fighting. Now, let us look quickly at the reason that Muhammad is on our list of ruling the world from hell. We have not really talked about why he's on the list other than just some information about him.
Ibadi is what it, I think is.
What is it?
Ibadi,
How do you spell it?
Ibadi.
No, that is a very small sect. That's only less than 1%.
I thought so. Okay.
Yeah, that's a very small sect. That's not the third. That one doesn't even really classify because it's so small. Truthfully, I mean, it's there, but it's very small.
Kawaji. Khawar. No? I'm just going through.
All right. Following the attestation to the oneness of God, the belief in Muhammad's prophethood is the main aspect of the Islamic faith. Kind of not surprising considering who came up with it. Every Muslim proclaims in the Shahada, I testify that there is no God but God, and I testify that Muhammad is a messenger of God. The Shahada is the basic creed or tenet of Islam. Islamic belief is that ideally the Shahada is the first words a newborn will hear. Children are taught it immediately, and it will be recited upon death. They repeat the Shahada in the call to prayer, the Adhan, and the prayer itself. Non-Muslims wishing to convert to Islam are required to recite the creed. In Islamic belief, Muhammad is regarded as the last prophet sent by God. Writings such as Hadith and Sirah attribute several miracles or supernatural events to Muhammad, but not the one that we looked at before because he couldn't do anything. First lesson, I think that was. Talked about he was called to perform a miracle, and he said that wasn't necessary. One of these is the splitting of the moon, which this blows my mind. Splitting of the moon, which according to the earliest available tafsir compilations is a literal splitting of the moon. But yet outside you see the moon is still whole. Maybe it's metaphorical. I don't know. Good question. The Sunnah presents the actions and sayings of Muhammad preserved in reports known as hadith and covers a broad array of activities and beliefs ranging from religious rituals, personal hygiene, and burial of the dead to the mystical questions involving the love between humans and God. Now, I must state, the Sunnah is the practice. It's not their Bible. It is their Bible, and it's just as important as their Bible, the Quran. But it's not. In other words, we use the Bible. The Bible is our book of faith. The Bible is the tenet of our faith. The Bible is our rules and practices that apply to everything that we deal with. The Quran is not. The Quran is more of a archive of what Muhammad did and what Gabriel told him to write down. Gabriel told him to write down. Okay? That's the record of that. The rest is what he said they should do. but didn't get put in the Quran because it wasn't from the angel Gabriel. Does that make sense? It's kind of the difference between the two. Okay. In other words, the Jews have the same thing, and the Catholics have the same thing. And the Jews have the Holy Scriptures, but then what they actually use is the Torah. What is the Torah? It's a book written by man.
Written by rabbis, practical lessons for Jews to follow.
Correct. Practical lessons for them to follow. And it's held in as high a regard as the Holy Scriptures, if not more so, because it's how they're actually supposed to do and follow the Holy Scriptures. Because God didn't give them the instructions, so man had to give them the instructions. And the same thing with the Quran and the Sunnah. The Sunnah is considered a model of emulation for pious Muslims and has, to a great degree, influenced the Muslim culture. More accurately, it has. When you think of Islam and what it is, and everything that we know about it comes from the Sunnah. The greeting that Muhammad taught Muslims to offer each other, "May peace be upon you," is used by Muslims throughout the world. And yes, I know how to say it, but I refuse to. Many details of major Islamic rituals, such as daily prayers, the fasting, and the annual pilgrimage, are only found in the Sunnah and not the Quran. See? It's the same thing with the Roman Catholics. They have the Bible, and then they have the canons, and they have all this other stuff. The man-made religion, because the Bible's not enough. The Bible's not enough to study. It just doesn't go into enough detail, folks. We got to have something else that we know is good. There you go. Muslims have traditionally expressed love and veneration for Muhammad. Truthfully, they worship him just as much as they do God. Because to talk against Muhammad is to talk against God, because he was God's messenger. So that's putting him where? God. Putting him somewhere up in this orbit here, right? The story of Muhammad's life, his intercession, and of his miracles have permeated popular Muslim thought and poetry. Among Arabic odes to Muhammad, yes, Poem of the Mantle by the Egyptian Sufi al-Busiri, 1211 to 1294, is particularly well known and widely held to possess a healing spiritual power. It's amazing. The Quran refers to Muhammad as a mercy to the worlds. The association of rain with mercy in Oriental countries has led to imagining Muhammad as a rain cloud dispensing blessings and stretching over the lands, reviving the dead hearts, just as rain revives the seemingly dead earth.
Because we all know that all those people we patiently work and like
We won't talk about that. We won't talk about that. Muhammad's birthday is celebrated as a major feast throughout the Islamic world, excluding Wahhabi-dominated Saudi Arabia, where these public celebrations are discouraged. There's your third group. Wahhabi. Not wasabi. The Wahhabi is the third sect of Islam, which is why Saudi Arabians and Iraqi and Iranians don't get along. Because they're either Sunni or Shiite, and they're wasabi, and they don't talk. Kind of boils down to different leaders. I mean, honestly, it's like the split between the Southern Baptist and the American Baptist in the 20s and 30s.
Actually, it began before that.
But it did. It did because the individuals that were involved were building their influence. And then once they reached the head, then they split. Well, it's no different. Someone comes up very charismatic, get enough followers, they start their own. And in Saudi Arabia, one of the reasons why is because the entire royal family is that, and there's no other choice. When Muslims say or write the name of Muhammad, they usually follow with the Arabic phrase, yes, may God honor him and grant him peace, or the English phrase, peace be upon him. I've heard that numerous times. In casual writing, the abbreviations SAW for the Arabic phrase or PBUH for the English phrase are sometimes used. In printed matter, a small calligraphic rendition is commonly used. I tried to put that in there and it does not show up, so I apologize. But it is this little bitty symbol, very small symbol. Think of it as the C, the little copyright symbol, you know, it's put next to name. That's kind of a Arabic calligraphy symbol that's put next to his name in documents. Since the hadith prohibits the creation of images of sentient living beings, Islamic religious art mainly focuses on the word. Catch that? Since the hadith prohibits the creation of images of sentient living beings, Islamic religious art mainly focuses on the word. That is why almost every rendition of Muhammad was done by infidels. And the reason that little calligraphy symbol is behind his name is so that it is associated with him, knowing that the name Muhammad is him and not someone else, because that is a common name. Muslims generally avoid depictions of Muhammad and instead decorate mosques with calligraphy, Quranic inscriptions, or geometrical designs. Today, the interdiction against images of Muhammad, designed to prevent worship of Muhammad rather than God, as if an image is going to make a difference, is much more strictly observed in Sunni Islam, 85 to 90% of Muslims. And here's that other one you were talking about, Ahmadiyya Islam, 1%. Then among Shias, 10 to 15%.
Now, the Shias is not the Shiite, is it?
Mm-hmm.
The Shias?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Shias,
It's the same.
Shiite. Yeah, yes, it's the same group.
Okay.
Depending on where you look, it's the same. Again, it doesn't mention the Wahhabis. They're strictly Saudi Arabia. It's like that. So I don't know the population there, but whatever the population is, that's that group. It's a small portion of the greater Muslim population, but greater than 1%. So that's why I think it's like 3 or 4%, something like that. Anyway, while both Sunnis and Shias have created images of Muhammad in the past, Islamic depictions of Muhammad are rare. They've been mostly limited to the private and elite medium of the miniature, and since about 1500, most depictions show Muhammad with his face veiled or symbolically represent him as a flame. There's a whole lot of depictions of battles that he fought, and he is literally a flame on a horse. Pretty interesting. It's almost like the Jews not writing or saying God's name because they don't know how to say it. Don't want to offend him. Again, second reason why I say they put Muhammad kind of up there with God somewhere. They said it don't, but I mean, he's up there. According to William Montgomery Watt, religion for Muhammad was not a private and individual matter, but the total response of his personality to the total situation in which he found himself. He was responding not only to the religious and intellectual aspects of the situation, but also to the economic, social, and political pressures to which contemporary Mecca was subject. Bernard Lewis says there are two important political traditions in Islam: Muhammad as a statesman in Medina and Muhammad as a rebel in Mecca. In his view, Islam is a great change akin to a revolution when introduced to new societies. Muhammad's, not historian. Historians generally agree that Islamic social change in areas such as social security, family structure, slavery, and the rights of women and children improved on the status quo of Arab society. They did. They must have been really bad before. That's all I got to say. For example, according to Lewis, Islam from the first announced aristocratic privilege, rejected hierarchy, and adopted a formula of a career open to the talents. That part is actually true. Just who it's open to. Muhammad's message transformed society and moral orders of life in the Arabian Peninsula. Society focused on the changes to perceived identity, worldview, and the hierarchy of values. And it may be true. Because under Islam, well, as long as you were a man, everything was equal. Well, no, I take that back. Not then, now. Over time, it's become men only. Women are worth less than cattle, actually. Economic reforms addressed the plight of the poor, which was becoming an issue in pre-Islamic Mecca. The Quran requires payment of an alms tax, zakat, for the benefit of the poor. As Muhammad's power grew, he demanded that tribes who wished to ally with him implement the zakat in particular. In other words, they had to tithe too, to him and the poor. Criticism of Muhammad has existed since the 7th century. I'm going to finish pretty quickly because we're about done. But I had too much to fit in last week, so. And last week was too much fit in the week before. When Muhammad was decried by his non-Muslim Arab contemporaries for preaching monotheism, and we talked about that. He believed in one God, and that whole area believed in multiple gods. And by the Jewish tribes of Arabia for his perceived appropriation of biblical narratives and figures and proclamation of himself as the seal of the prophets. I'd imagine they would be pretty upset. You look in the Quran, a lot of the stuff is like the Holy Scriptures, which he would have known, especially with the Jews in that area. And the Christians in that area, he would have known the Holy Scriptures, or known of them, and known where to find out that information. But you know, his stuff's not quite the same. It's a little different. And what he taught and what is taught now is, over the centuries, it has changed and changed and changed and changed. No different than what happened with Jesus. What Christianity believes now is not what Jesus taught.
Talk about it as a whole.
As a whole. As a whole. You look at Christianity as a whole, does not believe, teach, preach, disciple, none of what Jesus said and taught. Why? Because we have the Scriptures, and then so many religions in Christianity have their own books and teachings that are as important or more important than the Scriptures. So I'd imagine the Jewish tribes were pretty upset. And in the Quran, there's no mention of Jesus. He's taught as same as the Jews teach. He was just a great teacher. In the Middle Ages, Western and Byzantine labeled him a false prophet, the Antichrist, or portrayed him as a heretic, as he was frequently portrayed in Christendom. 6th 600 AD, Christendom was the Roman Catholic Church. It was a threat to their power. That's what it boiled down to. Contemporary criticism involves questioning Muhammad's legitimacy as a prophet. I agree. After the scriptures were finished, anybody who calls himself a prophet was just flat out lying.
False prophet.
False prophet. That's right. His moral conduct, was out there. Marriages was out there. Ownership of slaves, treatment of enemies. He was a bloodthirsty guy. His approach to doctrinal matters. Whatever I think, that's what we're going to do. Almost seems kind of like, we have those today, don't we? We just call them cults. Truthfully, cults. Except this cult just grew. And psychological well-being. Dude was crazy. He was having psychotic episodes. That was his visions.
And his wife was performing experiments on him.
Yeah, his wife was performing experiments on him, yeah. Whew. Tell you, she's scarier than he was. The first one, yes, the first one. But I would imagine the one who made him a pedophile, by the time he died, I'd imagine she was pretty scary too. Considering she's the reason that the Sunni branch has so many writings of his. Not that he, but of his teachings. Because of her. Remember, people die. Philosophies do not. And with that, I close on Muhammad. Thank goodness. Close that book. I want to go back there again. Just disgusted by the time I was done. Yes.
Makes you want to cry.
It does. That religion is based on power, individual power, control. I mean, you look at things, the men can do whatever they want. Women and children can do nothing. They don't exist for all intents and purposes except for as slaves. Modern day slavery is rampant in the Muslim world.
But the boy children are raised, from the time that they get to a certain age.
They get to a certain age, but underneath that, it's sad. If they make it to a certain age, then they elevate their status.
Yeah.
They don't make it to that age.
Yeah. You can see that at the grocery store.
Oh yes, oh yes. Now I'm not saying that's that way across the entire religion. That's just like saying there's no truth in Christianity. We know there is. You know what I mean? But truthfully, that religion is based on violence, intimidation, control, power. And all of those things boil down to that. Control, power. Those two things. That's what it boils down to. You control a person's life. And if you have a religion that gives you authority to do so, it's not a wonder that it is the fastest growing religion in our prison systems. Because it's a religion based upon power a religion based upon violence. And almost any violence is acceptable in any form. All right. Any other questions, comments?
It's a lot like Catholicism.
Oh, you made that connection. Catholicism.
Who did it?
One of these days we're going to have to. I don't know if we got enough Wednesday nights to do a study on Catholicism. Whew. And I don't know if that's. I think that's a dark hole we don't want to crawl down into. We might not crawl back out. I'll be honest. This is about as close to Islam as I want to get in studying and trying to. And like I said, I got off Wikipedia. Why didn't I research it harder? I didn't want to get any closer. I'll be real honest. I didn't want to get any closer to it. That was close enough. If it isn't true, okay. Still close enough for me.
Yeah.
Okay? And again, some of those beliefs, again, today, who knows? That's just history about Islam. So, just like history about Christianity, to the victor goes the spoils. So, whether it's true or not, don't really know. We weren't there. So, any other questions, comments?
The only truth that we have is in the Bible.
That's right. The only truth we have is in the Scripture.
That's right.
All right. Brother Joe, would you close us in a word of prayer, please?
Father, thank you for the time that you
We here at International Missionary Baptist Ministries are so thankful that you chose to watch or listen to this Wednesday evening Bible study. We will be broadcasting again at this same time next week. If you wish to contact us, we can be reached via email at imbr@imbmpodcasts.com. Our mailing address is International Missionary Baptist Radio, P.O. Box 1676, Smyrna, Tennessee 37167. Again, I repeat, our email address is imbr@imbmpodcasts.com. Podcast is plural there. Our snail mail is International Missionary Baptist Radio, P.O. Box 1676, Smyrna, Tennessee 37167. We thank you so very much for watching or listening. We hope that this was a blessing to you.